The Pelicans are currently the 5th seed in a Western Conference that is filled with stacked teams. The Pelicans have been up there with the best in the West for a good chunk of the season, but you almost never hear about them at all. The media barely talks about the Pelicans. If they do, it's only about 30 seconds, and most of the time it's just basic things they point out.
Trey Murphy, he is phenomenal at that wing spot.
I think Zion playing all season is good for the NBA.
But if it's longer than that, then they're probably just bashing Zion and calling him fat.
He looks fat.
While it is true that at the beginning of the season Zion had some struggles, that isn't the case now. As of right now, almost everyone on the team is healthy, and if it stays that way, the Pels could be making a deep playoff run. In this video, I want to dive a bit into what makes this Pels team so good, and show you that there is way more to them than just Zion, and that the Pelicans are genuinely a really good basketball team. I think that the most attention the Pelicans have gotten this season is when they faced the Lakers in the semifinals of the in-season tournament, and unfortunately, the Pelicans got absolutely embarrassed by them. They got blown out 133-89. They lost by 44 points. And that's with the Lakers starting lineup sitting in the fourth quarter. The Pelicans got clowned on by the media, but Zion got it the worst. After this game, everyone praised the Lakers and LeBron. As for the Pelicans, they were being counted out. No one really cared about them. They weren't seen as anything serious. And if you were in that small percentage that was a Pelicans fan that night, you know that loss stung a lot. I'll be honest, I really lost a lot of hope in the Pelicans after that game. But as bad as the loss was, maybe it was something that had to happen, because this game served as a huge wake-up call to the Pelicans. At the time, the Pels had a record of 12-11. Not terrible, but also not that good. But after that disappointing end in the in-season tournament, the Pelicans completely turned it around. And I mean really turned it around. After starting 12-11, the Pelicans went on a 26-14 run and currently have a record of 38-25. I'll touch on this some more a bit later, but first, I want to talk about what makes this team so good. Zion Williamson is currently averaging 22 points per game this season, and while it is the lowest in his NBA career, he's also averaging a career high in assists with 5.2. Brandon Ingram is averaging 21.7 points this season, which is pretty low compared to more recent years, but this season he's also tied for career high in assists with 5.8. Even if they aren't scoring as many points as other years, they're getting other guys to score those points. If you watch Zion in game, you see that opposing defenses always wall him off. 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 players trying to stop Zion from getting in the paint. And what does Zion do when that happens? Pass it to his wide open teammates for a 3. The same goes for Brandon Ingram. However, since B.I. doesn't just strictly score in the paint like Zion, he doesn't garner as much attention as him, but he's still a huge offensive threat, especially if he gets going. As I said before, even if they're not putting up crazy numbers every game, those two are paving the way for their teammates to do their thing. I want to talk about the shooters that really take this team to the next level. In 2022, the Pelicans really only had one real shooter, Trey Murphy. However, this season has been crazy for the Pelicans in terms of three-point shooters. Herb Jones last year was the best defender on the team, and he still is. But there was one problem. He wasn't nearly as good on offense. However, in 2023, Herb has taken a massive step forward. Defensively, he's still at that NBA all-defense caliber level, but he's gotten significantly better at scoring, specifically his three-pointers. Last year, Herb had a three-point percentage of 33. This year, he added 10% to that. He has a three-point percentage of 43.6 right now. But that's not all, because as the season has been going on, he's been getting better. In 2024, Herb is shooting 54.3% from 3. It's actually more likely for him to make the 3 than to miss it. Combine that with his elite defense, and I think it's not crazy to say he's one of the most valuable players on the Pelican squad. But that's just one shooter the Pels have. The Pelicans also have Trey Murphy III. Last year, he was a really good three-point shooter. He had a 40.6 three-point percentage, but he was shooting a lot, and a good amount of those were from way beyond the arc. This season, however, Trey actually got injured and missed a good chunk of the start of the season, and when he came back, he was shooting really bad. Every time he shot the 3, you could tell it was probably gonna go out. But these last 1 or 2 weeks, Trey has been shooting out his mind. I think the game that really solidified his return was February 27th against the Knicks, where he made 6 of his 11 threes. Just his recent game against the Raptors, Trey made 10 of his 14 threes. This is just unheard of. The third main shooter the Pelicans have is CJ McCollum. He's been shooting a career high 42.2% from the 3, and he's been a pretty good veteran this season. The Pelicans also have 2 more shooters. One is Jordan Hawkins, the first round rookie that actually won the NCAA National Championship with UConn last year. In the limited minutes that he's had with the Pelicans, he's been shooting pretty well and with a ton of confidence. He was actually in contention for Rookie of the Year early in the season, but after he started getting less playing time, that quickly went out the window. He's currently shooting 37% from the 3, but he's got a lot of potential. The last shooter the Pels have is Matt Ryan. He's actually shooting 47% from the 3 this season, but like Jordan Hawkins, he's not getting many minutes. So in total, the Pels have around 5 dedicated shooters. And it shouldn't be surprising when I say that the Pelicans have the 5th best team 3-point percentage with 38.2. And once you factor in that Trey Murphy is finally getting out of slump, it's not crazy to say that the Pels can possibly become the team with the highest 3-point percentage in the league. They already have the highest corner 3-point percentage with 42.8, so they're really not that far off from being the best 3-pointer shooting team. The Pels offense is pretty good, but they rely on those 3-pointers a lot, to the point that if their 3s aren't hitting, then they probably lose, and sometimes badly. Like in that game versus the Lakers in the in-season tournament, the Pels only made 22% of their 3s in that game. But if the Pelicans are hitting their shots, then that leads to them blowing out teams, and they've done that a lot this season. Out of the 62 games, they've actually had 15 wins where they won by 20 points or more, which is the most in the NBA as of right now. Their offense is pretty good, and I fully expect them to get better on offense as the season goes on, with Ingram getting into his rhythm, Trey Murphy getting out his slump, and Zion getting to his peak physical condition. But their offense isn't the only thing that carries the Pelicans towards being one of the better teams in the NBA. It's also their defense. Defense is something that the Pelicans do really well right now, but the thing is that this wasn't the case for the whole season. Before that in-season tournament game against the Lakers, the Pels actually had a pretty mediocre defense. They were ranked 16th in defensive rating, and you could see it in game as well. As I said before, Herb Jones is a really great defender, but early in the season, it was really just him doing all the defense. If you saw that in-season tournament game against the Lakers, you saw that the Pelicans played really bad defense, uncoordinated, all over the place, and not really trying. They just looked very lost. And the one who got the most heat was of course Zion. A lot of the times you saw him jogging and not really playing defense at all. But after this game, Willie Green might have made that a priority in his team, or it might just be simply that the feeling of losing a playoff-like game by 44 points wasn't a good feeling at all, because everyone started to play defense after that. In the second half of the season, I've seen so many Zion Williamson blocks. Defense has significantly improved for the Pelicans this year, and combine that with already having an elite defender in Herb Jones, and it's no surprise that since the in-season tournament up until now, the Pelicans actually have the 3rd best defensive rating in the entire league. I've listed a good amount of players so far, but there's still more players I have yet to talk about. The 20-year-old Dyson Daniels was playing at an elite defensive level before he got injured a couple weeks ago. There's also Najee Marshall and Jose Alvarado, 2 bench players that are pretty good. The Pelicans are a really deep team. Every player they have on the bench isn't a burden. They all bring something to the table. I really believe that the depth of the Pelicans team is one of the reasons why they're doing so well this season. Being able to rest their starters and not really drop off at all in terms of offense and defense is a really good thing to have. But as good as the Pelicans could be on paper, there's still some big flaws that could be detrimental to this team. The biggest struggle is that this team is not very clutch at all. They're actually 1-6 in games decided by 1 score. Their only win came against the Spurs. If you watch the Pelicans this season, you've seen them time and time again struggle to close out games. They've blown so many leads, it's actually kind of crazy. A very good indicator of the Pelicans' struggles to close out games is their first and fourth quarter margins. The Pelicans are one of the best in the first quarter. They actually have the 3rd best first quarter margin behind the Nuggets and the Celtics, but their fourth quarter margin is very bad. They have the 24th ranked fourth quarter margin. Yeah, they're bottom 7. And this inability to close out games could be really bad, especially in the playoffs. A really good example of this is in the game versus the 76ers. The 76ers were missing Embiid and Tyrese Maxey. By the end of the first half, the Pelicans were actually winning 63-34, but that huge lead that they had got all the way down to 5 points in the fourth quarter. The fact that they almost blew that lead is actually kind of sickening. The Pelicans also have yet to make a comeback in the fourth quarter this season. They're 0-14 when trailing in the fourth quarter. The Pels really are not that clutch, and the playoffs is all about being clutch. But maybe they could improve on this in the future. We'll just have to see. The turnaround that the Pelicans had after that in-season tournament cannot be undermined. That feeling of getting blown out in a setting similar to the playoffs was not a good feeling at all. Even though that loss hurt, I'm kinda glad it happened because the Pelicans are playing some beautiful basketball right now. This team has so many weapons, so many good players having career highs. They're just having fun. I want to finish this video with one stat that I found really interesting. Before the finale of the in-season tournament, which is December 9th, 2023, the Pelicans had the 18th best offensive rating and 16th best defensive rating, which had them ranked 21st in net rating. But ever since the finale of the in-season tournament, the Pelicans actually have the 4th best offensive rating and the 3rd best defensive rating, which comes out to the Pelicans having the 2nd best net rating with 8.9, only behind the Celtics. I said it once, but I'll say it again. The Pelicans are playing some beautiful basketball right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they make a deep playoff run this year, potentially even winning the championship.